Okay, we're gonna have some fun now. I know some of you like Netflix. I don't really watch it that often, but I did notice, and I couldn't overcome my own curiosity. They have a documentary on called The Mossad. And if you watch this documentary, I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on, this is one of the most excellent exercises in propaganda I've ever seen. And by calling it propaganda, I'm not telling you what to think about it, how to judge the people in it. I'm telling you what propaganda is. Because the objective of a propaganda piece is in order to elicit some sort of response from the audience that could kind of skew their emotions, skew the way that they perceive a topic, and ultimately drive their perception of reality towards a direction that previously they weren't at. Okay, let's watch one small trailer of it. I am going to have to try to do a fair use declaration on here, so we'll have to see if this passes muster or not, but here goes.
תחילת 76. אני המלצתי לסייע לנוצרים לעזור לעצמם, להגן על עצמם.
זה בעצם מה שמתחיל את התסבוכת שלנו בלבנון, לא?
תראה, החבר'ה שלנו שעסקו בקשרים עם הלבנונים היו בורים בכל מה שקשור ללבנון. הם לא הכירו את המדינה הזאת, הם לא הכירו את המנטליות.
תסתכל היום על מה שקורה בעולם, תראה שכל המלחמות הקונבנציונליות נגמרות מאוד מאוד רע. חלק גדול מהמטרות אפשר להשיג בדרכים אחרות, בדרכים חשאיות.
לפי פרסומים זרים, היו כל מיני מדענים איראנים שסיימו את חייהם בצורה לא טבעית.
המוסד יכול לחבר חיבורים שנראים לא אפשריים.
אני יצרתי את הקשר בין מרוקו לישראל.
הקשר עם המרוקאים כלל גם חיסולים פוליטיים? לדוגמה של איש האופוזיציה בן ברקה?
נו, זה משחק של מנוולים.
הוא יכול להשפיע כמעט על כל מעלה.
Where should a red line be drawn?
כמעט על כל מלחמה.
A red line should be drawn right here.
כמעט על כל מה שיכול היה לקרות ולא קרה.
מאיר דגן אומר כי תקיפה אווירית על הכורים הגרעיניים באיראן היא רעיון מטופש.
ראש הממשלה לא ויתר. הוא עולה אוקטבה. מה עכשיו אני עושה? אני חושב שהוא שוגה.
זה יכול רק להשתוות לטעות הנוראית שהיפנים עשו בהתקפת פרל הרבור.
All right, so if you watch this show, I couldn't get like a clip that was really getting into kind of the mood of the entire documentary, but essentially the Mossad documentary on Netflix is, in my opinion, going to help propagate this, and propagate I think is related to propaganda, you know, in terms of word roots and everything. But it's going to spread this notion that the Mossad is much more powerful than people think. And this could be moving the perception in a way that definitely the Mossad itself would like. Now, is the Mossad behind various assassinations, various plots, and violent actions around the world, on a clandestine basis? Clandestine in many ways is used as, it's a word for things that cannot be acknowledged publicly. So if an action happens, for example, I think in 2010 there was Mahmoud al-Mabhouh, who was it's hard to say his name, but he was a major official, I believe, in the financing arm of Hamas, who was found murdered in a hotel room in Dubai, I think. And that could not be publicly acknowledged by the Israeli government, okay? That's clandestine. Something happens, a clear suspect is involved, but the person who's suspected cannot in any way acknowledge that they are tied to it. In many cases, they won't deny or confirm their ties to an event that happened. And then it becomes a question of how much proof is there that this is actually happening. So there are a lot of interesting theories that have gone around. We'll see a couple of them about what the Mossad and what their other counterpart, their internal intelligence agency, the Shabak, do. And I've often been accused if you go on forums and you argue the topic of Israel in any way, and even if you give criticism of the Israeli government, but you're not being strong enough in it, you can be accused of being a Mossad agent, a Hasbara troll. It's pretty funny, actually, that people who consider themselves, they say that they're woke to the real, the real message, and the media is lying about everything. Look, I myself, you watch this channel, you watch my other channel, Bowed Like a Leopard, you probably are aware that I'm not really trusting of the mainstream media either. But the fact of the matter is that I still don't think you can accuse people of things without proof. Okay? The problem with the mainstream media is they accuse people of doing things without actually furnishing the proof. That is where we get to the area where we consider them to be liars. Okay? Now, granted, there are things that I think that Israel gets away with that you could probably say they, things like this guy was talking about with assassinations and things that happen overseas. Those are things that you could make a fair assumption that there was some tie to Israel or something. But some of these are kind of ridiculous. Okay, in Turkey, and some of them are a result of public of the propaganda of their own countries. Okay, so their own countries actually feed into this this reputation of the Mossad as something much more powerful and much more sinister than the Mossad is. So here, for example, in 2012, Turkey villagers see Israeli spy in migratory bird. A migratory bird has caused alarm in a village in southeastern Turkey after locals mistook it for an Israeli spy. Villagers' suspicions were aroused when the bird, a common European bee-eater, was found dead in a field with a metal ring around its leg stamped Israel. They called the police after deciding its nostrils were unusually large and may have carried a microchip fitted by Israeli intelligence for spying. So you're talking about this little bird here. They were claiming that it was going to spy on Turkey, southeastern Turkey. That would be close to the Syrian border. It was taken to government experts for examination and declared safe. The BBC's Jonathan Head in Istanbul says the regional office of the Turkish Agriculture Ministry examined the colorfully plumed corpse and assured residents of the village near the city of Gaziantep that it was common practice to fit a ring to migratory birds in order to track their movements. An official at the ministry told the BBC that it took some effort to persuade local police that the little bee-eater posed no threat to national security. At one point, a counterterrorism unit became involved in the case. Our correspondent says that wildly implausible conspiracy theories take root easily in Turkey, with alleged Israeli plots among the most widely believed. Ties between Turkey and Israel deteriorated sharply after 9 Turkish pro-Palestinian Islamic activists died in a raid by Israeli forces on a boat trying to break the blockade on Gaza 2 years ago. So it used to be back, and I've said before, I served in the Israeli military. When I served, which was until 2008, it was actually common for Israeli tourists to vacation in Turkey. So there were a couple of places where it was pretty popular to vacation. One of them was in Cyprus. Another one was the Greek island of Kos, and the other was of course Turkey. Antalya, I believe, was the most common place to vacation. And Turkey actually they made gangbusters on the Israeli tourism industry. I believe Turkey for many, many years was a great tourist destination for people all around the world because it was dirt cheap and, they just have a lot of scenic beachfront property. And that was when Turkey was under more secular leadership. And that's kind of changed I'd say that I'm not sure if people can still go there and really enjoy the same tourist experience, but I myself have never been there, so you'd have to check on that yourself. Here's another one from Turkish Weekly, and it says that Mahmoud Abbas accuses Israel of using wild boars against Palestinians. Sorry, I can't see the whole window here, but several Palestinian media outlets on Saturday, this was in 2014, quoted Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas as accusing Israel of using wild boars against Palestinians in the West Bank. Abbas's allegation was made during a speech he delivered at a pro-Palestinian conference in Ramallah on Friday night. The charge about the wild boars did not appear in reports published in the official PA media. This was not the first time that the PA accused Israel of releasing wild boars to destroy agricultural fields in the West Bank. In the past, the PA claimed that the IDF and settlers were bringing wild boars to Palestinian-owned farm lands in order to cause damage to their produces and intimidate farmers. Every night, they release wild boars against us, Abbas was quoted as saying in his speech. Why are they doing this to us? He also accused Israel of using false pretexts to prevent Palestinians from entering their lands in the West Bank. Abbas also called for establishing bridges of love with Israelis instead of the racist separation fence. He warned once again against the eruption of a religious war and called on Israelis not to come close to our holy sites, just as we don't come near to your synagogues. Abbas added, the Jews know very well that we seek peace and not war. So this is pretty funny. I don't know how somebody can really... think about it this way. Wild boars exist in nature in many, many different countries. They're pretty resilient. I think we even have them here in the U.S., certainly in Kentucky and Tennessee, areas where there's a lot of hill country and dense, dense forestry. So for them to accuse, and by the way, there's certain parts of Israel, especially the Galilee region, and that kind of abuts the northern West Bank, where there's definitely plenty of space where these wild boars could be living. So, yeah, that's also kind of ridiculous. But here's one that kind of is a pretty fun one. This is another conspiracy that I think is attributed to the Mossad or Israeli intelligence or whatever you want to call it.
The Sharm el-Sheikh resort sits on the coast of the Red Sea at the southern tip of the Sinai Peninsula, in Egypt. Over 5 days in December 2010, 5 tourists were attacked by oceanic white-tip sharks. One woman lost her right hand and left leg, another's spine was bitten, a man needed his leg partly amputated. The 5th victim was killed. But sharks do not come near Sharm el-Sheikh in the winter. They are rarely seen in the summer months. They very rarely attack humans. In the last 430 years, there have been only 9 recorded attacks by oceanic white-tip sharks. White-tips do not come so close to shore. Egypt's tourism minister said, "This is unnatural. We have no explanation." Captain Mustafa Ismail agrees the sharks were acting unnaturally, because, according to him, they were controlled by Egypt's enemy, Israel. Egyptian authorities caught 2 sharks after the first attacks, a 2.25-meter-long, 150-kilogram oceanic white-tip and a 2.5-meter-long, 250-kilogram mako shark. But experts compared photographs of sharks in the area before the attack to the captured sharks and said they were not the culprits. Then, the final and fatal attack happened. Mustafa Ismail says one of the killer sharks was captured in Eilat, the southernmost tip of Israel. The shark had a GPS device planted in its back. In Ismail's words, why would these sharks travel 4,000 kilometers and not have any accidents until they entered Sinai waters?
So essentially, his question is pretty funny. He's saying, well, how is it that these sharks, which already admitted under, before, they don't necessarily attack humans very often. Why would they suddenly start to attack people off the waters of Egypt and then suddenly get captured up in Eilat? And the truth of the matter is that I've read Jaws, I've watched Jaws. Now, I'm not, that doesn't make me an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but throughout the history of marine biology, sharks have been kind of a mystery to people because they have strange migratory patterns. They can be found almost anywhere. Some of these are, there's speculation about various species that were present in the past in the ocean, and from fossil records, and there's suspicion that they might still be around. Now, they're really going to go out on a limb here. It's pretty funny. So they suspect, because the shark. Let me show you let me see here. So the Gulf of Aqaba, if you want to look at it, that's the area that we're talking about. So let's open this up. And they have a problem. See, this is 30 miles, and you would probably say it's about 100 miles from Sharm el-Sheikh to Eilat over here. Maybe a little more, maybe 150 miles, and they're complaining, well, how is it that the shark attacked people down here and then migrated up here and got caught? And then they're complaining, well, it got a GPS device too. Well, the fact is that marine biologists track sharks using that. That's not indication that it was some sort of... Well, you'll see what they say. It's pretty funny.
Regional Governor General Mohammed Abdel Fadil Shousa said the theory was not out of the question and needed investigation. Egypt and Israel have long had an uncomfortable relationship. For 20 years after World War II, they were essentially at constant war, with open conflicts in 1948, 1967 and 1973. Since the 1979 peace treaty, they have officially been partners. But it is often described as a cold peace, marked by political tensions, suspicion, and border incidents.
Okay, so the thing is, what's funny about this is that they're not even using footage from Egypt. It says the Association of Tunisians in France. This is probably a demonstration in France. So they're actually using stock footage as a catch-all for what's happening in the Middle East that has, it's not even necessarily tied to this incident or to Egypt itself.
The past casts a long shadow. The shark attacks in 2010 had a harsh effect on Egypt's tourist industry. The Sharm el-Sheikh beaches were closed several times. When they reopened, Western tourists avoided the beaches, threatening local businesses with closure. Conspiracy theorists believe the attacks were targeted to hurt Egypt's economy. Surprisingly, remote-controlled sharks...
So here you have the premise. The premise is that it could be that because there was a cluster of attacks, shark attacks, in the vicinity of Sharm el-Sheikh, that Israel is using remote-controlled sharks to fuck with the Egyptian tourist industry. That's the premise, okay? That is the grand plot, that they would invest a lot of money to screw Egypt out of that tourist money.
...are real. In 2006, marine biologist Yella Atima announced his project to put sharks under human control. He explained that neural implants could steer the sharks by activating specific brain areas involved in sensing prey. Electrodes in the shark would trick the shark's nerves into sensing an odor trail in a certain direction. Atima's work was funded by $600,000 from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency and overseen by the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. Officially, they planned to use the sharks as stealth spies by attaching sensors or cameras to the animals. Dr. Atima's shark control project concluded in 2010, the year of the attacks. It is possible that the USA would share this technology with Israel. The US has provided...
So notice the weasel word. It is possible that they would share the technology with Israel.
military aid to Israel for decades. In 2007, it signed a deal to give Israel $30 billion in military
More stock footage.
aid. In 2016, the government renewed the deal to cover the next decade, increasing the amount of aid to $38 billion. This is at least 3 times more than it gives to any other country. Most of that money gets spent on military hardware like aircraft and missile defense. Since the aid is provided on condition that the majority of it is spent on contracts with American companies, it is quite possible that Israel would buy the military technology to control sharks from the country that developed it. Israel, however, denies that it was behind the unusual shark attacks in Sharm el-Sheikh. Instead,
Okay, so they're introducing this now. They're going to kind of walk it back. But so they set up this whole thing where they're using this amazing amount of this money, the free money from, and I oppose the foreign aid packages anyway, but they're saying, well, they're going to use it to buy these stealth sharks to go attack tourists off the coast of Sharm el-Sheikh. By the way, there still is, I believe, there are people who are, Israeli tourists who actually vacation there. So there, and back 10, 12 years ago, it was very common for people to vacation there, again, because it's cheaper and you get like very good accommodations there. So people are saying, well, this is basically, this is Israelis paying the U.S. money from U.S. foreign aid for shark attack technology in order to attack their own tourists. In some cases, tourists in general, but their own tourists are under threat. And this is a person who was accused of this. This is a guy who he's done a lot of research into lobsters, as well as the function of bilateral odor arrival time differences in olfactory. So this is shark smell and odor, and olfactory pathway for individual recognition in the American lobster. So this is a person who's pretty familiar with the sense of smell in marine life. Okay, so they're expanding on this and saying, well, it could be in the absence of any evidence that the Israeli government paid for his technology to be used in order to attack tourists.
Instead, Regional Governor General Mohammed Abdel Fadil Shusa now agrees there were other exceptional circumstances that triggered the attacks.
Okay, so after this grand plot was kind of woven in order to draw you in, they come to the real cause of what happened.
Biologist George Burgess says the sharks were drawn to the shore by sheep carcasses that were dumped in the sea just a fortnight before the attacks. The sheep remains were left over from the Islamic festival of Eid al-Adha, and dumping them in the sea is illegal. Egypt asked an international team of experts to analyze the attacks, and they suggested the sharks were also attracted by local diving companies habitually feeding sharks to draw them in for tourist photos, and by human overfishing depleting the sharks' natural food stock. Furthermore, Dr. Ratima's research into controlling sharks was not entirely successful. By and large, sharks could not be controlled by the neural implants alone. The predators had to be trained too, and only some responded to training. Atima used dogfish sharks for his studies, not oceanic whitetips. Finally, the attacks themselves might not be that unusual. Ocean explorer Jacques Cousteau called oceanic whitetip sharks the most dangerous of sharks. Although there are fewer than 10 recorded attacks on humans by them, whitetips are actually responsible for more human fatalities than all other shark species combined, since they are the primary shark that preys on victims of shipwrecks and plane crashes. There is little evidence that Israel planned or executed the shark attacks against Egypt in 2010. There is little rationale for it too, since Israel and Egypt are not only at peace, but growing slowly closer to each other. Nevertheless, the science does exist that would enable a government to create remote-controlled sharks, and the technology is a lot closer to achieving that goal than we might assume. It is likely that human activity drove and drew sharks to the shore in Sharm el-Sheikh, where they preyed on the only food available, us. The question is whether these deadly incidents will happen more often in the years to come, and whether they will be natural occurrences or man-made.
So yeah, that's pretty wild. So after after weaving this entire tale of shark control and various neuron transceivers or whatever you want to call them, it turned out that they were dumping sheep carcasses and chum buckets over the side of the boat in order to get these sharks. Well, the sheep carcasses had to do with the Muslim festival, Eid al-Adha, which happens every year. And then there was, of course, they were trying to draw the sharks in for the tourist benefit. So, no, the thing is that people want to believe things that will rationalize kind of random behavior. Okay, now, I did kind of go on a tangent there, but like I said, the Mossad documentary, if you do have Netflix, I know a lot of people will probably cancel Netflix. Check it out. I would not be surprised if there was money from the actual Mossad behind it, because there's nothing better for an intelligence agency than convincing people that it has capabilities greater than it actually does have, because it creates sort of this trepidation towards screwing with them. And if you watch the documentary series, you kind of get drawn into this mood and this vibe that these are people that are really kind of so ruthless that you don't want to deal with them. You don't want to have them coming after you. And that's exactly the type of response that propaganda is actually geared towards. It's not necessarily only to get you to like somebody. It's also, in many cases, in order to get you to fear them. Okay, so that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this. And if you do see the documentary, please let me know what you thought and what your opinion is. And you can put that in the comments below or on Dissenter, where I will probably be posting most of these links. And have a great day. Please like, share, subscribe. Also subscribe to my other channel, Bold Like a Leopard, as well as my channel on BitChute, which is also called Bold Like a Leopard, and Minds and Gab. And I'll talk to you later.
Central to the smooth.